Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our April 29th, 2025, 9 o'clock board briefing session. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. So we will go ahead and get started.
Well, good morning. I'm here along with Lieutenant Jason Robinson to brief the board on a renewal for the Pioneer Human Services contract. You've got a short PowerPoint and a briefing.
So this is just renewal of the personal services agreement we have with Pioneer for SUD services. This is substance use disorder. You've seen me before here. This is something we do on a recurring basis, but it's 2 components to it. It's the counseling 12-week program for the individual such treatment, and it's also the referral for assessments that the courts often request us to do on potential referrals to the program, but also just an assessment of the individual's drug and alcohol history. This is for the first 6 months of this year, so it's for $101,000. And there's just some basic information there as far as like for last year, our numbers, we had 96 total participants completed the 12-week program. We had 128 requests for referrals. And then we have a certain percentage of our clients do not complete the program. There are variables that is they either get released or they're just not compliant in the program. They have drug usage or they have a behavioral problem. Sorry for the data, John. That's pretty much it. So we're looking for $101,000 for the January through June period, and then it's funded through the mental health sales tax.
So just asking if we're doing it January through June, are we not doing it for the second half of the year?
Yeah, we were slow because part of this is contingent on having staffing to manage the program, and that for most of this year they've been on layoff status, so we were trying to assess whether that was going to happen or not. So to buy ourselves some time and to not extend this out beyond what we could manage with the staffing unknowns, we just did the first 6 months. So we have the staff member that was managing this program was on layoff status, but that's now since a few days ago was rescinded. So we're able to plan and move forward with not having that as kind of something that's going to be hard to deal with without a person to manage the program.
That would we expect the second half of the contract to come forward?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
That'll be it would just be double what we're asking for this. It'd be for another $101,000 for the July through December session. So it's a total of $202,000 for the year.
That's funded through mental health.
Yes.
Okay.
Does the same program that you had a recent graduation for SUD piece of it?
Yes, so I think you were at that graduation. So it was partly breaking barriers, which is the 5-day cognitive behavioral course, and then the second portion of that, there was about 6 of them that were part of the FP.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I had a chance to go out to the graduation for those programs out at Geiger, and it was really cool to see some of the inmates there taking charge of their lives a little bit, changes, and speaking to that right as part of the ceremony of how they want to be productive members of society. So that was cool.
Pretty impactful, that group. So we haven't had a graduation since COVID. Yeah, so first graduation in a while.
And the Breaking Barriers instructor had 99 classes.
Yes.
So this is her 100th coming up.
June 6th or June 5th will be her 100th class. So we are going to celebrate it. We're going to acknowledge her. If you're looking at the biggest impacts of recidivism, this Breaking Barriers curriculum. We've tracked it statistically also. And we know statistically that this has had the biggest impact on recidivism. Anything done.
And it's all voluntary.
All voluntary.
Yeah.
And it's a five-week class.
Little bit off topic, but done this rodeo a couple times. with regard to the Geiger and the Geiger work groups and soup, I know, talking to Walla Commissioner, he indicated that they're using, their inmates to do, forest thinning and, wildfire prevention activities and stuff. And I know that we have more trees and more risk. Has that ever been a consideration in terms of, using that as a resource to try and help thin out some of the behavior? I talked to the undersheriff or the secretary or the lands commissioner, and he said, oh, we would welcome that kind of a partnership with you. And so, but I don't know whether this is something we'd even consider or not.
You have looked at it in the past. DOC has DNR crews that they use. The biggest impact, the biggest component is the amount of training that's necessary because of the liability and the safety issues. Because at a jail setting, our turnover is too high. So anything that requires really focused, specialized training, DOC can do it because they have their inmates for a lot of times.
Right.
Our turnover is so high, we have to kind of have minimal type training requirements for like litter pickup and basic tasks versus, and then we're down to 2 crews, so our impact would be pretty negligible.
So this is probably more suitable for Airway Heights.
Yeah.
Than it would be for.
And they do have crews out. I actually saw them last weekend. They were up at the top of Rimrock above Palisades Park and they were clearing trail up there.
Yeah, they call them DNR crews.
Okay, thank you.
Just following up on that real quick, can you remind me, is there any work crews going out right now, or is it two?
We have 2 crews.
Oh, about 6 inmates on each.
Are they mostly doing kind of public works cleanup type stuff, garbage?
Litter is a big portion of it. We've done a lot of community cleanup events that we're helping sponsor in May. We've got Hoop Fest, Lilac Parade for today. The fair is obviously fun. And we have there's so much litter out there, so many opportunities we're always in high demand for those type of cleanup projects.
The limiting factor right now, the inmates that were eligible for crews are just not in custody right now. They're not in custody long enough to be put on crews. Any other questions?
No, I think if the commissioners are okay, that you don't have to come back and brief us for the next contract.
Sounds good.
Since we know that that's gonna be coming, we can
Yeah.
just put that on at 2 o'clock
Perfect.
when it's ready.
All right, thank you.
Okay with that? Okay, thank you. That's gonna take us to Mike Burgess. The end of session has come, we think.
Yes, it has.
Your
Yeah.
eyes are still red though.
Still a little groggy. Yeah, yesterday was hard. I was pretty tired yesterday, but I'm back to normal. But keeping in mind that your all legislative session never ends. So I guess there's that to be considered. But so I've got a list here of different things to run through. It's just going to be kind of more high level on an agenda there. I thought I'd just kind of start with a general update, go over some of the things that are in the operating budget. Sent you lists of both the entire capital budget project list for what's in Spokane County, including your things, transportation budget, and then some bills, one bill in particular to talk about. But just kind of in the broad sense, the budget was adopted this past, it came to agreement really on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. And then they spent the remainder of the week passing all of the bills that support the budget. And so those were the revenue bills, in addition to, there's policy bills that cost money. And so there's bills that we're cutting or spending or things like that. So that's really what was happening over the last week. It was pretty intense, pretty late nights on the floor, working on these bills, in particular in the House. Just as a point of reference, the budget's going up by about 7 or 8%. It's done through increases in revenue and then increases in, when I say increases in revenue, so that's tax increases, and then increases in revenue in terms of just more revenue coming into the state. The taxes that they looked at that were adopted, or well, I guess are going to be adopted depending on what the governor does, was an adjustment to the capital gains, an increase in the B&O, repealing some of the exemptions that are currently in statute, and then one that goes after the electric vehicle kind of credit program. And then the last one, the sales tax. So they extended the sales tax to a number of different services, and that will have, there will be local dollars that will flow as part of that. Primarily it's state dollars, but of course, as you know, you all get a carve out of that sales tax too. So those increases will trickle down to local governments, cities, counties, and the like. Obviously, if the bill gets signed by the governor, I can't give you an estimate right now. There is a fiscal note that has a local government portion. I guess I could share that with Scott if you're interested. But I guess from there you could probably extrapolate what your portion would be. But I can't give you a direct Spokane County number off the top of my head. So maybe that's something that we talk about more down the line once the governor actually signs it. But anyway, the governor has until the 20th to sign bills. I think there will be a pretty intense ask by those folks that are going to have to be paying the taxes to ask for vetoes. The governor did, in a little bit different than normal governors, or not normal, I guess, but a governor of the past, Inslee, Governor Ferguson did not do a post-session press conference. He put out a statement, and he's going to spend the next 3 weeks going through the budget. I think that the governor has shown he's going to be pretty engaged on this stuff. So we'll kind of have to wait and see where that all turns out. But I would expect a number of, vetoes coming out of the operating budget. Like, he can do line item in a sense, or proviso in a sense in the operating budget, not in policy bills. So I would expect a little bit more scrutiny than we've seen in the past on that. So transitioning to the agenda I gave you on the list there of operating budget items. If you can call up, it'd be the I don't know if it was the first document I sent you, but there's just some different funding things that are in the budget to call your attention to. And some of these are not new. They were on the list as we talked about the bills when the House and Senate operating budgets were proposed. A lot of these items were on there. The second one there is the 2.25 million for utilization and census. That's been the proviso we've had in the budget since I've been working for the county, that was re-upped. Transitioning down a little bit more, I tried to grab ones that I thought were county and as much as city. If you go to the one there, back up, sorry, a little bit. The 4.6 million, it's about the fifth one on the list there. That one was new to me. I'm wondering if you know what that facility might be. And then next down, or a couple down, is the state shared revenue maintained. And I just wanted to call that out. So there weren't cuts to like criminal justice assistance account and some of those other things that flow to the county just broadly. A little bump there in the public defense funding, continuation of grant funds for the GMA climate compliance. And given that you're going through your update period now, my guess is that's when you would access those funds, but I don't know all the ins and outs of that. One bad one there, though, the BECA funding was reduced, and that's it was the BECA bill named after a child, I think, and had to do with childhood truancy and some things like that. But there was pretty significant cut there, and I'm not sure why that happened, but that was one of the items that budget makers looked at and decided to reduce the funding on. And then the last item there, MRSC was fully funded. And I'm not sure how much you all utilize that, but I know local governments do. So any questions then? Yeah, sure, Commissioner.
4.6 million, do you know what
Yeah.
nonprofit that went to?
No, see, the budget won't call out the name of it. It just says a nonprofit. So that's what I was wondering. Sometimes you all know that better than I do, what's in your community there. So
Yeah, there's a lot of new nonprofits that have
okay. All right. Well, maybe we can get some more certainty in the future, but again, that one jumped out at me. It was a new one that I had not seen before. Looking at can I transition to?
Well, because I was just gonna say the Eleanor Chase and the Brownstone, I don't know what programs those are either.
Brownstone. The Brownstone is a reentry program. They're building off of out of DOC reentry after incarceration before they get released. It's down off of Division 3rd right there.
And Tori has called, we haven't talked yet, but she did leave a voicemail. The BECA funding is going to be an issue to possibly this year's budget even, is assumption on my part, but if the current funding runs out the end of June, we could have a hole for the second half of this year's budget.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, oh, for sure. So how about we do this? Let's skip the capital and transportation for right now and then just finish off what was on the sheet there in front of you. So one bill that we talked about, 2015, that's the law enforcement funding bill. That's the, you know, the grant program. And you'll remember Governor Ferguson had prioritized, he wanted the 100 million to hire new police. This and sheriffs, this is the bill that does that. I attached a bill report for you. You don't need to bring that up. I'll just give you a few highlights in the bill. So it does two things really. It sets up the grant program. And to qualify for a grant, the county is going to have to meet a number of qualifications and criteria. And those really center around like, you know, good policing practices, de-escalation training, different things like that, adopting different model policies that my guess is your sheriff's department has already adopted some of those, given, you know, the scrutiny that's gone on over the last 4 or 5 years. Maybe not, but that's one of the things that the county's going to have to do to qualify for it. In addition, you're going to have to submit staffing plans for how the dollars are going to be spent, because it's not just for sheriffs and officers. It can go to other like crisis intervention counselors and different types of things, like almost some of the things I would call like wraparound services that go along with policing. And so, you know, the bill, it's trying to aim at going wider than just hiring uniforms. The dollars can be used for recruiting officers from the community in which they work in. That's a requirement that's in the bill. You know, I don't know how many of your folks live out of the county. You know, I think it's probably a little bit different here on the west side where you have these big urban centers and a lot of the officers don't actually live in the city or the county that they're working in. But that was an interesting requirement that jumped out at me. Also in the grant, 75% of the money can be used for salaries. You're going to have to come up with the other 25% on your end. But those grants, that only goes on for 36 months. There's also a lot of other options in the bill that you can use the funding for, like training and different things like that. But I think the most important thing as your county is looking at how to access these grant programs, and it's on page 7 of the bill report. You don't need to bring that up right now, but there is going to be a prioritization of how the grant funding goes out. It's $100 million. That's a lot of money to me. But once you start, you know, pulling grants around the state to different jurisdictions, I don't know how far 100 million stretches. And I don't want to make an editorial comment on that, but I think there's a reality to that you understand. So if it were me and I were looking at going after these grants, I'd want to look at the prioritization process and target those items that are highest on the priority to advantage yourself amongst your other counties, jurisdictions that are going to do the outreach. That's purely an editorial comment on my part. But I mean, you have a long way to go. The bill hasn't even been signed yet. But when the county's looking at this, I think that's something I would want to focus on if I were in your shoes. I'm happy to talk about this more when the bill is signed. But again, just wanted to call that out, that there is a prioritization when it comes to how the grants are supposed to be spent. And that prioritization is done through the Criminal Justice Training Commission, which is kind of the center for all this. Like that's where your documentation will go in to say that you're doing these different model policies and all those types of things. And they're the ones that will be awarding the grant. So I wanted to make you aware of that. Sure. Question? Sorry. Oh, no. Okay. And then the other thing it does is it authorizes the tax. So it's an additional 1/10.
Sorry, Mike. I guess Commissioner Jordan does have a question.
Sure.
Is there a time frame in that bill as to when the dollars would start being awarded or when the grant program would be set up? You know?
Yes, Commissioner, the deadline's in it. It's probably in the bill report I sent. I don't know the date off the top of my head. My guess is it won't start until the 2026 though, because it's going to take a while to set the program up. But tell you what, let me dig into that further and read the bill and find the actual date. But there's another part of this that affects Spokane County anyway. The tax, so you're allowed to go out for an additional 10th. And you have to do it by June 30th of 2028, but you all have to wait a year to go. And you'll remember we had talked about, there was a provision in the bill previously that said that you had to wait 2 years, and that was because you had a vote fail. So that 2-year time period was dropped down to 1 year. So then, and I assume that would be from pass or when the bill goes into effect. So you'll have it, again, you're gonna have a time period to wait, but I don't know if you have to wait to go for the grants. That's to go out, that's to authorize it, the councilmatically. The 1/10 that you have to wait the year. So that's a good question, Commissioner. I have to see how those interact. So if I can get back to you on that, I will.
Thank you.
And
Yeah, for sure.
I think we don't have to wait the year now because we were 2 years out. We're within.
Oh, so the vote wasn't, okay.
But
Yeah,
when it went within a year, then it does allow us.
sure. Okay. But I mean, obviously, I know your staff and folks will look closely at what the criteria are, but again, wanted to make sure you call out that prioritization process, to give yourselves the best bet to get the project or to get the grant program.
Thank you.
So, sure. If you want to bring up either the capital or the transportation project list, I can talk out, it doesn't have to be in order. One or the other. Okay, so that's capital. So this is every capital budget project that was awarded in Spokane County. I highlighted the ones that were on our list. But I also sent you an email a couple days ago, just touching on the ones that are highlighted here. So we got the money for the courthouse funding, this crisis stabilization center, Plants Ferry, and the PFAS. I think were the 4 I highlighted there. But you don't need to go through this all today. But maybe Jeff, you can forward this list to the commissioners because I didn't send them this document, just so you can digest everything that the county got. You're going to recognize projects in here that I don't know what they are, similar to when I was asking about those programs that were in the operating budget, but just gives you a good balance of what's there and the amount of money that flowed into the county. But happy to say we got, I guess what I would call out the 2 highest priorities, which were the Crisis Stabilization Center, and I guess a 1A and a 2A and a 2B in terms of Plants Ferry, and then the PFAS dollars. I don't know the specificity on those PFAS dollars, like what they're supposed to go to just yet. And I think we can get more of that from the department. And obviously the capital budget needs to be signed. But these are the projects that were there. Do you have any questions about the capital budget projects?
I can talk a little bit about the PFAS. I spoke yesterday with the Department of Ecology, and then Friday with Dr. Velasquez, and then also with Heather Arnold and Jeff McMorris. And we would more than likely fund the wells that are the highest concentration of PFAS and just work down the list since we didn't get fully funded. That just get to the highest, most contaminated wells. And so we're working with Ecology to get their data. And so all of that is starting to progress, but in exchange for, with Representative Volz, he said the fact that we got some money this year means that we'll probably be in a good shape to get some more money next year. The Department of Ecology yesterday also indicated that with these funds, we can help leverage some other funds from the state that are already in pockets. So I don't think that this is the entry level, not the cap.
Okay. And then the next would be,
Sorry, just a
oh,
second.
sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna note that it looks like the Northeast PDA Housing and Childcare got some dollars, which is great, because I know we signed a letter of support for that, so
So it's
Yeah.
not near to the amount that was
No.
requested, but
maybe a third of what was asked, is that?
I think it was 3 million, was requested. 2 to 3 million.
Yeah, but Commissioner, spend some time with that list when you get a minute, is with all the free time that you have. Spend a minute taking a peek at that, because there'll be a number of projects that you're familiar with there. This is
The Newman Lake revitalization, was that something related to our projects, or is that a separate project?
that's the thing, Commissioner. I don't know the detail on it.
Interesting.
Or we can try, I mean, I can make the ask. My guess is that would have come out of the valley, correct?
No, it would have.
No.
Fourth legislative district, and Commissioner Kearns might know.
One more time.
Oh, I guess I need to take a Spokane County geography class.
I saw that on there. I mean, I was not aware of that ask, so I saw that on there. I don't know.
But that would have been a fourth district legislator probably. Is that what you're saying?
Most
Yes.
likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Right.
don't know if that was anything that our water staff was involved in,
It
so.
was related to fish and wildlife, updating the boat launch dock. That's what
I'm not
I'm
sure.
sure. Not that have been under. WDF.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll keep going.
Okay. Sure. And then the last here is the list of the transportation projects. As you read this, so commissioners, it's important to note, so at the top there, you see where it says project across the top legislature and it says prior. So don't conflate money in the prior as though it's new money, right? You're going to look at the line there that where it says 25, 27 and then go down. That means it's new money. Okay. So then as you go down, you can see I highlighted projects that reflected items that we've had on our agenda before. And obviously I highlighted there at the bottom, the largest one, the north-south corridor. To my understanding, the funding was not delayed in that, though there is some dollars in the out years, but I don't know enough about the construction schedule to know if that 28,371, if that's money that's just being pushed out or not. But the narrative I had heard that the north-south corridor funding was held as it should have been.
So my question, I don't know if anybody, so the original date for north-south corridor completion that we were hearing prior to this session was 2030. When we all traveled with GSI to Olympia, and every legislator said the new date was 2032. So does this funding keep us at 2032 or keep us at 2030?
Where is that?
That's my question. I don't know.
Well, so Commissioner, just
You think that keeps us at 2030?
I heard yesterday that it was,
Said 130.
yeah, I heard
Okay.
yesterday that it was to maintain the current schedule of 2030.
Okay, okay,
right, but that's where I don't know if that
was 1961,
okay.
but now it's 2030.
Take a lot of money for us to get.
So that's where I didn't understand for that 28 million. That's not a huge number, right? Compared to the other numbers. So the bulk of your finish is done where in the 411 falls. Right? And that would be in the by 30, correct? If you go back to the top and the way the dates spread for that column, but yeah. So that'd be 27, 29.
It's gonna be 27.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Original
yeah.
date.
So, and then it got pushed to 30.
23.
Apparently Senator Riccelli's newsletter says 2030. So
Okay.
there's some information from a legislator.
All right.
Yes. Yeah. So so there you have the project list.
Front seat, Al.
Just saying.
Front seat of the.
I'm
hearse.
working at it.
I wasn't going to say that, Commissioner, but I thought of you.
Everybody's seen the photo.
Yeah. So
I just,
Um,
Scott has a question.
I just wanted to check with Kyle. Is this Argonne Road reconstruction, was that our ask? It's 30, I don't know if you see it or not, but it's 3.963 million.
I think that was one of our asks. Let me see if I have any data from Jamie on what exact portion that is.
but I don't think that funding level's high enough based on what I had seen on our agenda, I think.
Nowhere close.
I think
It's
it could be
related to the
Millwood's.
interstate bridge.
It could, you might be right. That could be the Millwood project.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got those, see, I think those like where it says FM 25, that's some sort of a coding of the project that I'm not familiar with the specificity of that.
Great mobility.
That's Millwood. Yeah,
So it's not ours.
no.
So that's what I have for you today, commissioners. I'll follow up, Commissioner Jordan, to all of you on the dates that we were talking about with that, when you can access the grant program and get some specificity around there and how that interacts with the date by which you would do it councilmatically. Then that's back on the law enforcement issue.
Thank you.
If anything else happens during veto process, or anything I hear about, I'll probably just email you at this point. I don't know that I don't know that I need to do a call next week. I'll obviously do them whenever you want me to. But at this point, it's going to be kind of more wait and see how the governor acts on the different bills.
Appreciate all your efforts.
For sure. Happy to do it.
Okay, thanks,
All right.
Mike.
Thank you all. Bye.
Enjoy some time off, hopefully.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Kevin Ritchie. If not, we're gonna go ahead and we'll have Todd. You're here, so we'll have Todd. You go ahead and come.
Good morning, commissioners. Before I get started, I can defer to Commissioner French, but I would like to introduce our interim CEO, airport CEO, Frank Miller. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I've been here about 2.5 months, but I was raised in Western Washington. I'm originally from Tacoma. Graduated from Pacific Lutheran University and then went on a career around the country managing airports in Alaska, Colorado, Florida, Texas, California. My last airport was Burbank. I retired from there in January, and as I was retiring, I was approached and asked if I would come to Spokane and fill in as the interim CEO until the airport can find a permanent replacement. And I am finding it very enjoyable. I want to commend the county on your partnership with the city and the airport authority. There's very good staff out at the airport. It's very easy to guide and lead a staff that you have there. So the intent is not to let anything slow the airport down. I'm here to help them just reach that goal. So unless there are any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Todd, but very happy to be here.
And the goal is that he will fall in love with Spokane, come out of retirement, and just take up residency here.
I would like to second that motion.
Yeah.
Frank is a very accomplished, very humble. He's a very, very accomplished airport executive who did many firsts in our industry. He also chaired one of our largest airport trade associations. So it's not just myself and my coworkers that admire Frank's accomplishment, but it's the entire industry as well. So we are uber grateful for the airport board's selection of Frank to guide us through this next couple of months. So it's been great. It's been great having him here. I'm hoping he'll stay as well. But so my second item is first of all, I want to start with an apology. If you think it's deja vu all over again, because I was just here a week ago, you are correct. Within hours after briefing the commissioners on the purchase and sale agreement of the property located at 5410 South Hayward, we discovered an error in the due diligence period that would not have allowed us to complete the due diligence in time for the PSA. So we would have had a conflict, and we elected to go back. Mrs. Parker, the seller of the property, was incredibly gracious, quick to sign, and very patient and understanding. So the only material difference is that we do have an Exhibit B as part of the purchase and sale agreement, which just extends the period of time until the end of July. This should be wrapped up, frankly, by mid-May, if everything goes according to the schedule that we've laid out. Again, the property is located at 5410 South Hayward Road. It's just on the west side of Hayward, south of Thorpe, the West Plains. It's property adjacent to other parcels that we have acquired. It's within Airport Compatibility Zone 3. It's within the noise contours of the current runway. And it's also on our airport layout plan, which is our master document that summarizes the entire master plan and allows us to purchase the property as well. Maybe to the end. There is yeah, that's just that the current owner is Carolyn Parker, 5410 South Hayward Road. It's residential. It has a home and a couple of outbuildings and sits on 1.62 acres, a little over 70,000 square feet of land. The valuation was determined by MAI appraisal at $282,500 or about $4 a square foot. Are there any questions? Yeah, I'm sorry to come back and waste your time yet again. I enjoy you all, enjoy your company, but that's not why I was here.
Well, we got to be introduced to the new Yes,
That was by far the most important. We intended to get him down sooner. And the schedule's just matched up for this morning.
Well, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome back to Washington.
Yes.
Thank you. Most people retire in the South.
Okay, that's gonna take us to Kevin Ritchie. We skipped over.
Apologize for that. Good morning. I just have an update on our 10-year Axon agreement. Originally, we had planned on a certain amount of taser, the energy weapons that are used for neuromuscular incapacitation for less lethal. We estimated some numbers based on our staffing at the time, not realizing that we'd be so successful in hiring everybody all of a sudden. And so we've run out of them. And so we need to modify the contract a little sooner than I expected and add about 20 more tasers. It's at a cost of $276,000 and some change over 110 months. So it's just amortized over the remaining 9 years of the contract, or whatever 110 months is. That's all this is, just a briefing to let you guys know. We're just making some slight modification to it, just to add a few more.
And you don't need to do any other changes. That's the only one.
That's the only one. We've had to modify some licenses because we kind of underestimated how many users that we have, people who need to, like, from records or from public records and all these other things, who have to have licenses. And so we made a few modifications to that and added a couple that we should be pretty good with those. This is just, we want to give everyone on patrol, obviously a taser weapon to use. And then we had people outside of patrol and other units who don't necessarily need them, but they kind of use them voluntarily. And we didn't know how many of them would want to do that. We don't want to restrict them to not have one if they want one. So those are kind of the numbers we're throwing around. And we thought we had a pretty good guess, but we heard so many people that we ran out basically. And so we just need to buy a few more. We'd like to keep 10 on the shelf as spares just in case. And so this will give us, after giving everyone who says they want one and currently has one, a taser, we'll have 10 on the shelf for spares. And then we also have some that Axon just gives us for nothing, for exchanges for repairs and things like that. Well, that's all I had.
Thank you.
I just want to keep you updated. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Kyle.
Morning, Commissioners. I very happy to be giving you an update on the Public Works Operations Building construction and let you all know where we're at with that. Things are going very well. Go to the next slide. This is just kind of the map on the left there is a little bit of a diagram showing kind of the distributed nature that we had in scattered locations of our operations prior to the project. So on the current construction site, what historically was used by our bridge crew, training, our central shop fleet operation, we're all occupying that site. And then you see there, block to the south, block and a half, we have our construction inspection and materials lab, our sign shop and our signal shop. Those are the folks who will be leaving that campus for the construction of the new Crisis Relief and Sobering Center. And on the right there, you can see kind of a rendering. That's looking to the northwest with the kind of bank, the hillside illustrated in the back. We ended up going with a two-structure construction, just building a storage building and then our office site, which also has some internal shop space as well. Go to the next slide. So you can kind of see the pre-condition. We had some pretty rough buildings out there, a lot of water damage, some mold, a lot of asbestos we had to mitigate. And those structures were very end of useful life. Next slide. So here's our status update. This is what it looked like about a week or two ago. That this is looking kind of eastward across the site. That's the office building on the right, the storage buildings behind it, where we're demoing that blue building that we were able to operate out of during construction. So we started this project, actually broke ground last spring. We are already in the process of getting our temporary occupancy on the storage building that is completed. And we're hoping to move in this month. Then we demo that blue building and finish our site work on the north half. Some of that site work has already begun. So we've taken down several buildings on site already. We had to mitigate some contaminations. Another component of this project was that we secured the revocable license for Sharp Avenue. So that street, you can't really see it, it's to the right of that picture, that bisects our new operations facility and our existing central shop fleet operations. We basically have that street. So part of this project is installing gates. We have temporary construction gates on it now because we're using it already, but we'll also have operational gates in there so that we have, you know, safe and secure site control across both blocks. So that was a really big and inexpensive advantage to this project, and it'll keep our crews safe as we're going back and forth between the sites and gives us a little bit extra square footage that we didn't have to buy. So can you go back just one? There was one other point in there. We've already started doing some paving on the south portion. There's a covered parking structure that's for like sign truck and a few things that, you know, struggle in the winter trying to pull out signposts and signs in the middle with snow covered beds. The office building is ahead of schedule, and we have accelerated a lot of the south site work the site work on the north half as well. We're working on finishes. Next slide. So this is just a rendering schematic of what the interior looked like. We have a training room. We have, you know, all 5 of those operational teams moving in there. We're already starting to get furniture moved in and cabinetry moved in for those operations to have a quick transition. Yeah. So we are way ahead of schedule, about 2.5 months. And looking like early to mid-June, we will be completed. We were planning for Labor Day. We are looking to come in about $1 million under budget due to not needing to remove as much contaminated soil as we had originally anticipated, and kind of smartly moved some of it around and tried not to haul off as much as possible. Separating out that storage building saved us a lot. We're trying to build that storage into the earlier building into a single building, but a lot more bang for our buck just having a separate storage unit, and just being really good about you know, making sure we were building what we needed, not what we wanted. I think there might be one more slide. We'd like to get you all out there, or individually out there anytime you'd like. It's gonna be real quick here. We'll be operating out there in June. We're gonna kind of I think we're planning on the week of Juneteenth, and using a bunch of our summer help and try to get everybody moved over in a single week, so that we're not dragging that process out. Use as much help as we can and get us all set up and running so that we'll be there. It's not the best time of year for construction to be moving, but we'll make it do, and bring a lot of helping hands, and you know, feed them a bunch of burgers or something along those lines, and keep us moving. So anytime if the commissioners would like to come out as a group or individually or any way you'd like, happy to take you through there before it's open. We can certainly also schedule something you know, when we're in there, if you'd like to see kind of the occupied site. But if you want to see it as it finishes up construction, the end is always fun because you're starting to see the finishes come together and start to really have a feel of how this building's going to get used.
Seems pretty exciting.
You know, construction people, well, they don't show excitement very much. I am getting so many wonderful comments from the staff. They can't wait. I mean, they've been in some pretty dilapidated accommodations for a long, long time. I think this is going to be huge for us, and great for culture retention, attracting new staff, to have such a great facility for them to all be working out of. It's going to be pretty cool.
Then I just, as long as you're here, we have done in the past the National Public Works Week proclamations, so that's gonna be coming up May 18th through the 24th, so. Team, it's okay to put this on the agenda for when we get back from DC.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will do that as well and make sure we get that proclamation. For National Public Works Week.
I'm just really excited that things are moving so quickly. It's awesome. Remind us who the construction contractor is on the project?
Gargo, it's the contract on this one.
Anyway, well, that's great. So you get to be there in the summer. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, they did some pretty creative scheduling. We were using that whole north half of the site, you know, for all our laydown and everything, and they've just squeezed themselves into every corner they can to free that up to begin. We were gonna do all the site work basically after the buildings were done, and they found a way to bring that in on top of the schedule. You know, getting occupancy of the storage building was kind of key for that. So we've had crews still operating through the construction site as we've been building, so everybody's been really accommodating and finding places to work out of to make it go as quickly as possible. So yeah, we're looking at about a 15-month construction instead of 18.
Great. Exciting under budget.
Yeah.
All those things, so that's great news, so thank you.
Thank you.
Kyle's team can reach out to the commissioner's assistants and schedule some time as your availability.
Yeah.
Occurs in your calendar.
And if there's any preference of coming before we're done with construction, you can see it kind of pre-occupancy, or we can do a post-occupancy, either is great.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, that's gonna take us to Doug.
Pretty. We have a nice presentation Jonathan's put together. I'm here to speak to you about an easement on our Mike Peak property. And to supplement the presentation, Jonathan's providing a handout right now that shows a close-up of the existing easement and the new easement route that's being requested. And we have just a few slides that cover it, really. So with that, Jonathan?
Yeah, awesome. Well, like Doug mentioned, we received a request from Avista for an easement on the Mike Peak Conservation Area. This easement would affect 3 parcels in the conservation area, comprising about 900 acres. These parcels were part of an acquisition that happened back in 2017, and the funding for that acquisition was Conservation Futures Program and also the grant from the Washington State RCO, Recreation Conservation Office. Conservation Futures contributed about 1.3 million, and the RCO contributed about 1.2 million. So total acquisition costs are about 2.5 million. This was a very interesting and advantageous acquisition for the county because it connected the Great Lake Regional Park with the existing Mike Peak Conservation Area. And with that acquisition, it brought into one area about 5,300 acres of recreational land, which for Conservation Futures and for the county as a whole, this is a very big recreational property and a good advantage to recreation in Spokane County. Vista acquired a 60-foot easement back in the mid-90s from Inland Empire Paper, and that was to bring power up to the communication towers on Mike Peak. Vista is now requesting a new 10-foot easement to take that power and put it underground. That easement would largely follow along the existing easement that they have, the 60-foot easement. However, it would deviate in a few specific places where they would like to bring the easement closer to the existing access roads so that they can access the easement better. And if you want a little bit more information, we handed out this exhibit here that was provided to us by Vista. And looking on map 1 of the exhibit, you can see where the overhead purple line is the existing easement, and the yellow line is the underground route. You can see where it enters the county property, and in map 2, you can see it follows basically right along the existing easement. Flipping the page to map 3, you can see a deviation there, and it's deviating from the existing easement to follow the access road. And then there are a few deviations from the existing easement on map 4. That is simply to bring power to those communication nodes. So largely the same easement, a smaller footprint, and not a whole lot more disturbance there. Avista will after they bring the power underground, Avista will remove the poles in the existing 60-foot easement, and they will restore the landscape. We did include in the item packet an exhibit at the item packet that was included in the civic clerk. It was handed out to everybody. There's a restoration plan that they provided us detailing how they're going to restore everything. That does include 2 years of maintenance after they restore everything. After the power's underground, we will work with Avista to terminate and release the 60-foot easement. And also, since the 900 acres of these parcels is encumbered by an RCO grant, we have already worked with RCO to obtain a waiver so that we don't have to do any additional work to ensure that this use, which is not an agreed to use, this use can happen under encumbered property, on the encumbered property. So some of the benefits to this easement to the county, we will essentially recapture ownership of 50 feet of easement all along the existing easement. So there's a net benefit there. Also, we're bringing overhead power lines underground, so there's an aesthetic benefit, and also at the main reason why Avista has requested this is to reduce the potential wildfire risk, bringing these lines underground. It'll also, for them, improve the access to the easement and to their underground power lines and the junction boxes, and as I mentioned before, landscapes. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm curious if any of you have any questions about this request.
It seems like it's a
Pretty straightforward.
and a good thing. Especially if they're gonna go underground, that's gonna make it that much better.
Yeah.
Wildfire.
I think it's a real win for the site and win for the community property.
And getting the waiver from the state.
RCO.
RCO, but.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard to get those, but I think in this case. You're anticipating it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, shows just how easy they made it to accommodate and encourage this kind of an activity on the site. And so but it's nice. We'll take it whenever we can, because sometimes those can be really, really time consuming. And in this case, it was pretty smooth and very straightforward. And I think it's one of those projects that really speaks for itself as far as the benefits to the property and the site. So, please.
My only question was, do you think 2 years is enough time for? I know you said 2 years for Avista to kind of maintain or manage or make sure that
Monitor the
the
restoration.
restoration is going. Do you think is 2 years a normal time frame? Is that how did you choose that time frame?
I think that's, we've had as little as 1 year, but I think 2 years is more realistic. And my sense is honestly, if for any reason we had areas that weren't successful, they would stick with it and do what's needed. It's based on our experience in the past. They're really committed to seeing this have a positive outcome. And so I think that's a really good time frame of what they're doing. It's gonna be natural type seed and then improvements and monitoring that.
It's mostly just reseeding, but I'll have to look at the restoration plan, but is there any tree planting involved too?
I don't believe tree planting.
So it's just kind of
Yeah, and
undergrowth.
noxious weed mitigation.
Mitigation,
That's what
okay.
they're gonna
Right,
be
well, then
maintaining.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll look to have this before you in the next week or so. On the legislative agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Scott Chesney.
Commissioners, good morning. We are here today to talk about the comprehensive plan, specifically the environmental impact assessment, environmental impact statement as part of that. Clay White is with Kimley Horn. Kimley Horn is the prime contractor on the EIS as part of our overall consulting team for the comp plan. Today is a broad overview of what is an EIS? How does it affect Spokane County planning? What are the basic steps we're going through, starting with the announcement of our scoping period, which will go out later today, and our first scoping meeting on May 7th. So with that, I will turn this over to Clay to walk through some of these slides on the basic introduction.
Thank you so much. Grateful to the commissioners for the opportunity to present in front of you today. I spent 16 years working 4 counties for a joint private sector, so I love counties. And the opportunity to be a part of this process is really special for me. So thank you so much. So yeah, there's, you know, the decision on the comprehensive plan has to occur before June of next year, but there are a lot of things that frame up the things that we're going to study and the approach to engaging the community. And so we're setting the table for that conversation today. So just a little bit on kind of the high level project objectives for the overall update. So just a little bit broader. I know that Scott and the team have been here today, but we're going to be updating policies and regulations consistent with state law changes since the last update. There's a new climate element that we're developing. There's also a lot of new housing legislation. So again, this isn't a new comprehensive plan, but it is an update. We'll be updating the critical areas consistent with new best available science. That's a part of every comprehensive plan update. And then a big piece is planning for housing. So in the past comprehensive plans, you planned for population, for more people, and you planned for jobs, employment that would go with it. Now with housing element changes, the planning's gotten much more granular. So we're not just planning for accommodating people, but we're planning for housing types that align with different incomes that people make. So it's not just planning for capacity for single family or multifamily, but really trying to assess, you know, what kind of housing types are affordable so that everyone has a place to call home. But that increases the complexity of the work that we're going to do. And of course, the important thing we always talk about as well, the Growth Management Act provides a framework for planning. Community vision is really such an important part. So making sure we're hearing the community and what they want and making sure we're bringing that to the board so that you can make quality decisions. Next slide. So I'm not going to go through the whole project schedule, but if we broke this down, the project into kind of 4 phases, you kind of have, beginning would be kind of your data collection and analysis. I kind of think of that of understanding where are we, because you can't plan for the next 20 years until you have a foundation of where we are. So understanding how much capacity we have for growth, what state laws have changed since the last update, like framing up kind of the context for the conversation. So a lot of that work is just getting completed right now, and we're going to be shifting into drafting the draft comprehensive plan. But as part of that, we're also going to be doing a SEPA environmental impact statement. So there's a lot of moving pieces as we transition from kind of existing conditions information and early engagement to the community to plan drafting and framing up the range of kind of alternatives and items that we're going to study as part of the comprehensive plan and environmental review. so that you have a wide range of options to select from at the end to accommodate the next 20 years of growth and how you're going to provide transportation and facilities and utilities as that growth occurs. Next slide. All right, so kind of if we're going to set the foundation for the update, it's important to understand how many people are we planning for, housing units, employment. So I think we can go to the next slide. So as we talked about, the project's gonna be framed around population, housing, and employment growth. The counties worked with the cities so that when you know that the county as a whole is planning for a certain amount of growth, it gets distributed between the county and the cities so that each jurisdiction can complete its comprehensive plan. As we discussed, the housing targets are new. So this is new for everyone. It's new for all communities across the state that are Growth Management Act fully planning counties. Next slide. So there's a process to start with population. There's a process, the Office of Financial Management, or OFM, releases population projections. They have kind of three ranges: low, medium, and high. When you look at like the state rules that kind of talk about how you distribute growth, the medium is kind of the assumed growth projection that you utilize. You can select a target that's higher or lower, but you have to build a record around why you're expecting more growth than's projected or lower growth that's projected. The county and the cities are utilizing that kind of medium range. And then the countywide population projections are allocated to the county in each one of the cities. And then the cities and the county all use those as the baseline for their planning efforts. And you hope when everybody's done with their plans, you equal 100% of the population growth that you're expecting over the next 20 years. Next slide. And overall in the county, that's about 100,000 more people. So the 2023 population estimate for the county and all the cities is about 555,000 people. By 2046, the projection is that you'll have about 650,000 people. About 35,000 of that would be planned for by Spokane County, a majority of that within existing urban growth areas. So less growth focused in rural areas are planned for those areas, more growth within the unincorporated county. So about 35,000 more people within those areas by 2046. That's pretty significant.
And if I can interject a second on that. You've seen these numbers before, especially those of you on the steering committee. One of the things we're going to be looking at with this chart, with one that's coming up, is that continual allocation to the rural part of the county, that 4,700 growth outside of the UGAs in the rural county. Right now in the OFM projections, that's sort of a remainder. It's like, well, all of this gets allocated into the urban growth areas and here's what's left. We've got to take a look at that number based on historic rural growth patterns and determine how realistic that number is. 4,700 residents on essentially unplatted 5-acre, 10-acre parcels. There really aren't 2,000 5-acre parcels that are vacant in the rural county. So is that a realistic allocation for the rural suburban split? We think it's a little high, but right now we don't have a basis for that other than tracking what we've done historically. So again, these are still, they're good numbers, but they are preliminary and they're going to keep shifting as we move toward the UGA part of this assignment.
And that's why they're kind of those initial targets that give you a framework so you can begin your process, knowing that real life circumstances, engaging your community, looking at additional data is, can frame things up a little differently as you move forward.
When do we start having a serious conversation about capital facilities and applying capital facilities to the growth projections that different municipalities think they can accommodate?
We have asked our constituent communities to bring back the first cut at that information in time for the May steering committee meeting, which is I think the 21st. That will be our first chance of saying, how does your projection match up with your ability to serve it with capital facilities? They have told us early on that they didn't think they would have a final analysis by then. At least the city of Spokane said they didn't have a final analysis by then. But we've asked them enthusiastically to try their best to get us something in May so that we've got a better way of making a decision for the July meeting. Some of that goes part and parcel with the EIS, as Clay will talk about later. As we're setting those scenarios or the alternatives for study, we need to know better what those allocations are, because that's going to factor in the kind of development patterns we're going to be looking for in these suburban edges, balancing that with the placemaking activities that you've already been aware of. So all of these moving pieces are slowly coming together into a black box to turn the crank.
Based on the early numbers that we've got from the city and their challenges with meeting capital facilities now, that number seems grossly overstated, which is the problem we had back in 2001, and I don't want to repeat that mistake and stuff. So anxious to have those conversations and put reality to rejection so that we actually know. I think that 4,700 was actually light, not heavy. So I just don't want to be in a position where we're fighting this again for the next 20 years like we have for the last 20 years.
We certainly agree, and we have made the city specifically aware of that the last 3 years as this plan started reaching its beginning. And we've put it in the sense of cooperative sense that the city has their own determination on their land capacity analysis. But as we've said from 2021, county will check your work because the county, you are responsible to set that urban growth boundary. You are liable for that if we are appealed and taken to court, not the cities. So yes, they have great latitude in telling us what they believe their number is. We have to keep talking to them about their assumptions so that we can give you a confident assessment that this is where we think we can believe is our growth pattern. So it's been on the table for 3 years. It's no surprise to any of the communities that the county will be in fact sort of duplicating their work. We're not going to say your LCA is right or wrong, but we're going to say in these circumstances, here's what we believe you're telling us.
As we plan later this year for the range of land use and zoning changes that the commissioners may consider, we have to ensure that it's not just adequate for, providing housing or jobs, but that there's all the public capital facilities, utilities, roads, all of those things to surround it. There are requirements in the Growth Management Act that if you don't have the capital facilities to serve development, then you have to reassess your land use element. So it'll be important that as we kind of set those parameters, that they're realistic with what can be served and be adequate. So existing kind of conditions of what are the capital facilities that exist now, and then you have to plan for the gap between what you have and what you need, just like you're doing for all these pieces. So it'll be really complex, but it'll be vital as we plan for that next 100,000 people within the county.
Just to kind of piggyback on Commissioner French's question about timelines, when does the part of this, that this whole process happen where we start actually talking about specific areas of expansion? I know there's been a number of requests from folks that are requesting, certain parcels come in, but I mean, when do we get down to the part where it's like, okay, on the north, we bring in X number of acres, on the east, we'll bring in X, to the south? I mean, when do we get down to that level where we're actually talking parcels, number of acres, and where?
If we make at least reasonable progress in May, this coming month, we will have the basics of what that geography may look like by July.
Okay.
If we have that on our schedule, if that stays on schedule, then by September, we'll have a pretty good idea of what an urban growth area is going to look like. And as a reminder, there's a couple ways of doing this. One is, of course, we're back in GMA compliance. We're still part of our settlement agreement, which generally encourage us to not grow the overall acreage of the urban growth areas. However, as we've talked to the board before, there's more than almost 2,000 acres of land bounded by an UGA boundary that was created in 1990, but were left as rural acreages or some non-urban category. Those acres, in our mind, are going to be part of a swamp on trying to put the growth where the growth needs to occur and not preserving areas that haven't developed for 30 or more years. So there's multiple moving parts to what that geography is going to look like. Part of it is the raw demand. How much land do we need? And then where is it best positioned to take advantage of capital facilities, growth patterns, and the other things that will happen? That discussion really will be in its prime between July and September.
And part of the presentation today is going to walk you through, kind of how do we set these bookends for SEPA so that you have a kind of a broad, some options when you make final decisions, but some of the pros and cons of making different decisions. But this is part of the process today to communicate and set the foundation for that exact conversation so that we can go do the planning work and bring you back responsive information.
And just a couple of other touch points. We're already on your calendar for our quarterly briefings for the rest of the year. The next one is May 19th. So after, we'll have kind of a broader summary of what's taken place, where our status is and where we're going for that May, June, July pattern. By the time we get to the August briefing, a lot of this will start taking form. And so there's a couple times when we're coming back to talk to you to get your guidance and direction to go back. So we're pretty much on that schedule to move it.
All right, so just housing very quickly, so you understand how many people you're going to plan for. Now it has to be translated to different types of housing that you'd be planning for. So we have those kind of population allocations for the county. It gets put into this tool that was developed by the Department of Commerce, consistent with changes to the Growth Management Act. It's called the Housing for All Planning Tool, and it projects housing need by different area and median income levels. So 0 to 30, people that make 0 to 30% of the AMI, 30 to 50, 50 to 80, and so on. And then we can understand what housing types would fit within those different buckets. So we've done that analysis, and we can go to the next slide. So if you take up, it's a little bit hard to see, but the inside the urban growth area, the county is going to be planning for about 17,000 new housing units. Outside the UGA, there's about 6,100. But if you take it, what's interesting about this is you look at the different area median income brackets, and you can see that it's heavily weighted towards lower AMI brackets. This is consistent with what we see in all communities across the state, that there's a need for more affordable housing types. So, this would be more multifamily, more attached housing. And you can see that there's less of an allocation for housing that is at 120% of the area median income or higher. That would typically be like single family detached housing. Next slide.
But if you're relying on multifamily housing and you don't have a function to be able to provide home ownership, that's also a violation of the Growth Management Act. You've got to provide for home ownership, not just housing.
Yeah, it's not just that, one housing type. I mean, like attached housing can provide opportunities for home ownership. Townhomes are sometimes the new starter home because housing is so expensive. So I agree with you wholeheartedly that you have to provide a variety of housing types.
Right.
But because of affordability issues in the state, this is kind of how it'll spit out kind of that you're going to be planning. The need is more for people that make less, and there's less need for people that the higher income spectrum. It's not unique to Spokane County. And so what we look at when you see the tables, Commissioner French, is that, right now, in terms of when we apply how much capacity exists for various housing types, you'll see that there's a capacity shortfall of about 8,000 or 9,000 units at that between 0 and 120% of the AMI. At the lower spectrum, up to 80%, there's a real capacity shortfall, which means this is what we need to be planning for. There's currently a capacity, sufficient capacity at over 120% area median income for the targets that have been allocated.
And commissioners, this is again one of those charts that is data that is still in need of further analysis. The challenge the county has had from the beginning of the housing bill from the legislature is those top 4 categories. Those lower area median income figures are very hard to accommodate even by policy in suburban edges and the rural edges, because they are by nature, they're more distant from services, they're more distant from transit facilities. It's simply it's a kind of a planning mismatch. And at the same time, the bill and the legislature is saying there must be what they call a fair share distribution of these among the various communities, so they don't all land in the central core of the city of Spokane. This is an ongoing policy analysis that we're working on to come back and talk about. But it's going to be a challenge. And I guess the thing to remember, two parts. One is the county shows a net deficit of overall space for growth. And we looked at, where's it worse and where's it better? But the other part is we have to, for policies to allow housing in these areas. It doesn't mean it's going to get built. It's a sort of a conundrum in the legislative process here. It's like you must allow for it or you must not prohibit it. But there's nothing in here that says the market's going to respond and actually build any of this, without other, Commissioner French, as you pointed out, without either ownership incentives or some other kind of subsidy or incentive to write down the cost of that housing to an affordable level. It's a whole other series of policy discussions to make any of this real.
County provides the zoning, but doesn't build the housing.
Well, and if your capital facilities plan relies on, GFC charges and impact fees and all that kind of stuff, then you're gonna end up in the same situation Snohomish is in, where the cost with all of those extra fees and everything, $85,000 a house. There's no way you can build affordable housing when you're starting out at the ground level with 85,000 of additional cost, and you haven't laid a piece of concrete or framed up a piece of wood. That's the other challenge.
We are tracking those again along a parallel path, but even starting with the way land values have changed in the last 5 years. Land values alone are making it very, very challenging to build an affordable product, even for purchase, given the current set of development rules that exist in the county and in the cities. The lot sizes are too large for expensive land. You can't build that home. You need to be able to build 1,200 or 1,000 square foot homes and on smaller lots if you're going to sell them, if you're going to provide that ownership pattern. And so again, there's an implementation side to this that we're months from being ready to come back and share with you, or at least get some ideas. It's pointing out, this is the start of how all of this needs to be studied so that you can ultimately make a decision on how we're going to do it.
So my wife told me this morning that Facebook last night blew up in terms of houses for sale. And with the legislature, taking the action that they did in terms of capping rent increases and stuff, landlords are getting out of the business right and left. I had a conversation with Steve, a good friend of mine that was part of the landlord association. I said, landlords are just getting out of the business. It's no longer profitable in the state of Washington. That entry-level housing is going to be a challenge.
These are tough challenges, but we're prepared and to try to bring you solutions as part of this. But these are really tough challenges as we plan for a lot of growth. So, all things we're going to have to work through as part of this process. I think we can probably skip one slide and then just go to the next. So, just that we're planning for employment as well. Spokane Regional Transportation Council kind of work through setting the employment targets. There's typically like a job or housing ratio that's utilized, supported kind of by the state rules. So there'll be about 10,000 more jobs that the county will be planning for as part of this process as well. So understanding capacity and how much we need in order to accommodate the future. So then just next slide. So just kind of how this all works together. We have our targets for growth out to 2046. We complete the land capacity analysis to understand how much capacity that we have. We determine if zoning code changes or other development code changes are necessary to accommodate the growth out to 2046. And that's how you kind of get to your GMA requirements. So we're at the stage now where we have to start figuring out what are the range of things that we're going to be studying to accommodate that capacity shortfall. All right, quickly we can just get into the EIS process. So parallel to kind of doing your comprehensive plan, we're doing an EIS as part of this process. The CPEIS allows us to look at identifying and analyzing environmental impacts and alternatives and mitigation measures for the various scenarios that we're going to plan for. So, we don't have to pick, if we have a population shortfall, housing shortfall, we don't have to say, we're gonna look at just these 5 zoning changes, and that's the only thing we're studying. SEPA allows us to set kind of parameters, and then we can study a broad range, and then you can adopt anything within that range. So it does provide a lot of information to decision makers that kind of goes beyond if you weren't going through an EIS process. It also provides an extra opportunity for the community to engage and provide information about the impacts of certain actions the county might take, and look at things like capital facility planning from a variety of different perspectives of how we're gonna accommodate people, jobs, and housing. Next slide.
So that projection, that projection of 10,000 jobs in 20 years, we've seen 7,000 jobs in 7 years.
This is to be careful. We're using generally accepted projections that are parallel with SRTC and with the state. The goal of this is to complete that within a methodology that is accepted by GMA, Commerce, our friends at FutureWise, and not overstretch at this stage. As we start to put together an implementation program for this, yes, we want to have an aggressive economic development implementation that goes beyond the plan itself. And then it's easier for us to come back in annual bites and say, look, we projected to grow by 10. We've already grown by 3, and we're 1 year into this. We need to start adjusting. So it's a legislative strategy to make sure we're putting before you a GMA compliant plan that has accepted methodologies. Once we've got that in place, then we can start to take the look of reality of where do we want to grow and how aggressive are we going to go.
Okay, thank you.
So SEPA, again, as part of the EIS process, we're gonna be looking for some early direction on the scope and kind of the current study parameters. And this includes any urban growth area expansions or swaps that would be studied as part of the EIS process that ultimately provide you choices at the end of the project on how you want to accommodate growth, choices that you want to make. Next slide. Okay. So I like to think of them as bookends. That's how I was thinking of this. That you adopt SEPA bookends, you have a no action alternative, and then we'll have 2 action alternatives of different ways to accommodate growth. And you can adopt at the end, you could adopt anything within those bookends. If you adopted something that was, you made land use choices that were outside of what was studied, you'd have to go back and then reevaluate the transportation impacts or the capital facility impacts. So you want to have a range that's broad enough that you think it's within the range of things that you'll adopt. And then, of course, it has to be matched up with the Growth Management Act and just into following those processes to make sure that it also is meeting GMA requirements as well. Slide. So again, just the things that I would encourage the commissioners to be thinking about as we work with you to set bookends. We want to make sure that you have room to make decisions. It also allows us to engage the community on getting preferences for things that they would like to see. So that's great for community engagement. There is a cost to analyze. So if you did an EIS, you set the bookend really wide so you can study as many different options as possible. You're doing transportation modeling, capital facility planning. So there is, I think it's like setting bookends that are within the reasonableness of things that you might ultimately adopt. So kind of trying to sync things up as best as possible, but not tying you down to outcomes as well. And of course, just that nexus with GMA as well. So making sure that you feel that all of those kind of ranges would be things that could be supportable as we help you build a record for whatever decisions that you make. Our job is to get you good information. So next slide. Okay, so just, I think we can probably cut this short, but we've got that land capacity analysis, and then we'll be, kind of that next step is just, we do have a shortfall. We're identifying measures to accommodate growth within the existing urban growth area, and then thinking about what else do you want to do? So is that studying expansions, or are there areas that you want to swap? And I think we can probably stop there. For urban growth area swaps, there was legislation 2 years ago, and it has 2 different processes. There's a process to do swaps of urban growth areas, and there's criteria in the Growth Management Act you want to meet. Obviously, there's considerations when you move things in and you move things out. But I think next steps is just continuing to work with the board to identify that range of things that you want us to study as part of the EIS. So that we can go and do that work and then engage the community to bring back information.
The first chance we'll have to talk about those action alternatives will be at your May 19th quarterly briefing. That was timed along with these placemaking sessions that we're continuing. We're doing the follow-ups on those today and tomorrow. We'll have a chance to assess what we hear from those follow-up feedbacks and then put that in one of the ideas for the range of alternatives. So there will be more substance to these recommendations when we see you again later in May. And at that point, we'll be kind of looking for some nods and guidance on this one makes sense. We've got some other ideas, and it'll start to develop where these bookends are, which we again like to have kind of within that July timeframe or thereabouts, so that we can move the EIS process into its draft form by the fall and a final EIS around the first of the year. First quarter of 26.
Thanks for the information. I get kind of having the studies of different scenarios and looking at the pros and cons to those. Can you give some examples of what like a mitigation might actually mean for a comp plan? And then is there anything that SEPA kind of says, no, you can't do this or that within your comp plan, kind of the outer bounds of those guardrails?
Yeah, so I think that there's probably no outer bounds on SEPA. You're probably relating it to a little bit to the Growth Management Act and staying within those bounds. Your mitigation would be things like studying the transportation impacts of certain choices and mitigation for transportation, or studying capital facilities and utilities and kind of, what would that mean if you were expanding an urban growth area versus focused on a lot of infill development? So your mitigation would be derived based upon the analysis of those different options. So if we kind of have bookends, we could study some different scenarios, and then you could pick and choose and go, we're going to make some zoning changes here, and then this swap makes sense, and combined it equals the capacity that we're planning for. So we would identify mitigation based upon, but it's at a non-project level. So it's not a project EIS, but there will be different impacts based upon different choices to accommodate growth.
Here's kind of a classic example that everybody can relate to, I think, and that's our colleagues across the river in planning for growth in the Latah Valley. Lots of land available, lots of good land to development. The plan is for thousands of housing units, and yet the transportation plan on 195 is very constraining. So to make that development plan happen, there's a mitigation that has to take place. In this case, it could be $1 billion mitigation to change a highway, or it involves other planning for other routes. So we're going to be working with the city on that. We call it the triangle between 195 and I-90. That's how does that develop over this next 20 to 50 years? But that's a classic case of, look, we wrote the plan to put all this housing in here, and oops, the highway can't capacity. It doesn't have that capacity, and we didn't build in the ability to fix it in the project itself. So that's one that we look at and go, let's not do that. Let's make sure we're studying realistic things up front. And where that comes, it's not just, is the pipe size the right thing? It's, we measure that through what we do in the capital facilities plan, which is levels of service. Can we meet the level of service we have set for ourselves with this amount of new growth and this amount of infrastructure? If the answer is yes, we're good. If the answer is no, you, the board, have two choices. You can pay to upgrade the infrastructure, or you can downgrade the development proposal to match the infrastructure. It's kind of simple when you get down to that point.
And Latah is just not transportation, it's fire, it's parks, it's bicycling and sidewalks. It's a whole, if I don't know that there's a capital facility that they have accomplished in the valley.
Is there a comment period or a process around the EIS?
Yes.
Yeah, extensive.
So when does, I think there's a scoping period?
Starts today. The
Starts
scoping announcement will go out today. The first one is a 30-day notice period. We are holding a public scoping meeting midday, May 7th. And so we'll have a chance to do that. We will then also be inviting the agencies to comment as that period goes along. We're doing this process up front to get kind of this, early and frequent participation before we've got the alternatives ready for study. So there'll be a second or third round of this as those alternatives come into play. But the announcement and the start of this goes this afternoon.
And then once we have the draft EIS available, there'll also be a comment period on the draft EIS. And then, of course, there's lots of engagement that we're doing even this week on the comprehensive plan and framing that up. So lots of opportunities to take community input early and often to help frame up everything that we're working on.
So how is that public engagement going, and how's the website that supposedly our public can go to, whether they're a developer or a resident, to be able to access when these workshops are, when these scoping meetings are? I still find it difficult to find out when things are going on myself. So I don't know if I can be put on a list too, and I can help spread the word.
We're happy to
But if
the web has been a little bit confounding from my perspective. We do have a web ready to go. We've kind of got it on hold at the moment. And it sounds like, well, we don't have a web. Well, we do. The existing web page through building and planning, the comprehensive plan button is truly comprehensive with a small c. All of our past processes are there. Various documents are there. They're all posted there. On the right side is the current round of public engagements, this week's meetings, the upcoming rural meetings, May 6th, 7th, and 8th will be up there. The visual preference survey is up there. So our existing web, while it may be a little, out of date from a contemporary perspective, is still pretty effective at getting that word out, and people know how to get there. It's SpokaneCounty.org/BP, and then you click on the comp plan button, and everything. You're one click away from everything we do. The notification process is always a challenge with big projects like this. We have well over like 4,000 email addresses in our main email box. Those were broken down by areas of interest. We try to tailor them so we're not bombarding people with that. We're also using the Civic Send process that gets a more consistent basis out. We've been doing podcast work that are posted on our website. The challenge, and Commissioner Randolph, I'm sure you remember this too. There are groups of people that are really interested in planning when it's like, what's it going to do? What's it going to affect my house, my land? There's a group that want to get deep in the weeds, and that's deep in the weeds group is the consistent there at every meeting, but it's a relatively small group. When we send out notices to 200 or 300 people for, say, these events this week and the ones in February, and we get 20, that's a pretty good return in most cases. So comprehensive planning to the general public is not as exciting as it is for us. Nonetheless, we continue to reach out every opportunity we can get, and we are always welcome at creative ways to do so. Pat and Teresa have been helpful with our social media side. So we're taking advantage of that tool as well. We're trying to hit every opportunity we can.
So, you, and I forgot my thought.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. It'll come back to me.
We have done a content review, the communications office, and forwarded along suggestions to Scott and his team and consultants to address some of the topics I think Commissioner Waldorf brought up. I think one big one that Charissa and I looked at with the website is it has a number of tabs across the new kind of public facing external URL. I think it's like Spokane County 2046.
Yeah, that's
something like that.
That's not been released to the public.
Right. When that is released to the public, one thing to emphasize the public engagement would be to have the landing page of that have all of the events and public participation, right?
the current version has a tab kind of explaining what the comprehensive plan is. But when people hit that URL, if it does get widely distributed, I think leading with the page, it should be an easy programming change on the back end. Leading with the events page so people can see what's coming up and where, and then having those linked to the surveys, like take surveys. I think that would make the site itself more engaging. And then people could kind of do the chutes and ladders to get through the other tabs to, you know, explore other areas of interest. Let's say they're really interested in the environmental section, you know, that there's a whole section on that. Maybe they're really interested in housing component, or really interested in capital facilities component, or schools, or whatever, however it's broken up there. I'm not an expert on all the different titles, but that would be our recommendation. We've made that recommendation to Scott, to share it with the board for your awareness, is to have the public events and the public participation, the surveys, how to get involved in the plan, be the primary landing page.
On the May 19th meeting, that's on a Monday. And is that going to be as part of our briefing here in the morning, or a separate meeting? And will it be Zoomed? Will we be able to participate by Zoom?
We put it on your strategic planning agenda.
Okay.
So we assume it would be essentially any of your Monday strategic planning. And I think we tried to ask for as much as 90 minutes of your time, 60 to 90 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Appreciate all the
Thank you.
effort you guys are doing.
We'll be back.
That's gonna take us to Justin.
Good morning, commissioners. Scott,
Morning.
Abraham, talk a little bit about that. So good news, just following up Mike's update this morning, as you guys heard, Relief Center. So thank you to the board members for all of your guys' support. They asked, that is tremendous news. Demonstrates the county's support and regional recognition of the work that we're doing there at the Relief Center. And I know Mike's going to give an update on that. A lot of great work on that, a lot of exciting things. I have to pull back from asking for too much because we have a budget. So more to come on the Relief Center on that. And then the 1.125 million, that's the acute care diversion funds. That was one of the asks that we put in early. So thanks to Mike's support on that. That helps us also fund the Spokane Regional Stabilization Center. That funding was approved and that continues to come to the region. So excellent for Spokane County and continued support for the Stabilization Center. Also with Maddie's Place, they got their 2 million in this budget, but it's great news. Definitely gives them an ongoing operation for this next year. Challenge with that is there's still no certainty on ongoing sustainable funding from the state. We're hoping with the final report that was generated by WSU in conjunction with HCA, which demonstrated that it brings value and it has worth, but stop short of actually advising it being added to the state plan without further input, that the state will recognize that, put more effort into it, identifying how they can incorporate that into the Medicaid. So that's the next step and a big push this next year. This funding will most likely require a reduction in services, even though Spokane County does pay 20%. That cost to increase to expand out to the 16 babies that they've been doing now will most likely require them to reduce down to probably 9. Outright, the last time I talked to Sean, they've had such interest that they're actually turning away individuals, having to be very selective on the highest need individuals. So the need is there, which is challenging news, but it is, big thank you to Mark Strelli and the representatives supported that, being able to get that funding.
Great. Maybe we can talk later, but I would be interested if there's anything the board can do to try to send a message to the HCA that they need to get this figured out as it relates to Medicaid, because it's gone on a long time. as you know.
Yes.
So, I mean, if there's any role for us as the board to reach out to the governor's office or something and say, let's go, the study's done, what's the delay? So that's just my strong feeling about it.
I would concur with that, that was a discussion we had yesterday with the mayor, that with the new administration, kind of making sure the mayor understands that it is sitting with the HCA director. That, I let her know that Representative Mark Rogers worked really hard to make sure legislation allowed for this. And so with the new director and the new governor, maybe we need to put together a letter that we can really sign to get to them, because a new administration.
Just as a reminder, I think the board, or at least the chair, had previously sent a letter inviting the governor, past governor, to tour Maddie's place
Yes,
and the first lady.
that's in discussions as well.
Good. Yeah, I think I would just suggest that, and having been involved in a lot of that advocacy with Dr. Patinos and others, it'd be important also to copy or get the attention of the governor's policy advisor for this area. The past one wasn't really familiar with the problem, and they didn't seem to have a lot of insight into what HCA actions or decision making was around this. It was kind of separate and apart from the governor's agenda.
No, we just had our mayor chair meeting yesterday, and so that is one of the items that I think we need to joint request to the governor's office, to have the governor come over to see what we're doing with STARS, what we're doing with Maddie's place. So since he's new and legislative session's now over, to try to get over to the side stage to see what's going on here.
Definitely. And I know that the governor's office been working with HCA for a new director. They're in the final stages of selection. So that's also another key point, is what the new direction of the director, when whoever that is takes over. Marianne Lindelbud is the current interim one. And although she has expressed interest in following that, she's scheduled to leave here at the end of May. So that's be on our list to be able to push HCA once we get that director in. And I know Sean's very eager also to work with the board to ask for the governor to come over and visit.
Yeah, and we were thinking, because there's just several things just within your department that would be great to highlight for the governor. So as well as, and I stated too, trying to get Representative Lauren Davis over as well. So
Yes, that would be
so
great.
maybe we could do kind of a group of legislators as well.
Because they really didn't also hit the key issue of the 23-hour crisis relief center funding for sustainable long-term built into rates. They answered some initially, but they did not look at the long-term. So although I'm very happy about the initial investment they're giving us, we really need to get the rates identified. And although 1813 did pass, which is the other update, so congratulations to board for all of your support. This was an amazing thing. Chief of which is it gives more control to a local area in identifying where the crisis funding and Medicaid dollars go as in response to our 6-county region. So that part's great. It also carves out 23-hour crisis relief under that funding, but it stops short for actually giving more funding to it. So that's the key aspect that was pulled out. It also sets aside additional funding to help the state begin reprocurement, but it pulled the reprocurement requirement out. So we didn't get that part. And a lot of providers and communities were eager to get new Medicaid MCOs in so they can look at establishing better rates. That's forthcoming. So thank you. I know you went and testified, so thank you for that, for all the support. It's going to be huge for our region, and it'll allow us to have a little bit more control. So a lot of great news on that, but that would be great to highlight all those areas to the state to recognize that we're doing some things in Eastern Washington, especially when they passed quite a bit of funding for the west side for facilities that we weren't included in. So, something to consider in the next.
And I think we need to identify that. So we do get people over here, we can highlight that that's what's happening, what did happen, and maybe that was unintended consequences. So.
Yes. And I think they left that open-ended to deal with that. So we're having an open mind as it pertains to, didn't exclude us particularly, but my voice is not stopped in announcing that at every meeting that we have. As you can all know. Be persuasive if given the right opportunity. So great news on that. And also one of the other key aspects that provided for the ASL was more flexibility on the reserve funding. So we have a maximum reserve that we're allowed to maintain. Anything beyond that, the state has clawed back. They clawed back 10 million, but 1813 allowed for us to maintain more for an ebb and flow when we want to invest. So that also gives us a lot more flexibility and less concern about this these issues of not being able to have funding to invest in from the state side. So really love that. And we were very careful with our negotiations with that clawback so that we preserve more of the flexible GSF instead of the other funds. So even though 10 million was clawed back, we have more GSF reserve to be able to invest. So that's good news. July 1st, especially as we face a continued budget shortfall and other issues with behavioral funding. So great news this session, at least for those areas. There will be some cuts, and we'll talk to you more about that as we hit July 1st when we acknowledge those. One of the biggest ones was the RMP program. We initially envisioned it to be a 60% cut, was only a 20%. So we'll see a reduction in services, but not as drastic. Like I said, we'll give a bigger update as we get to July 1st. We know a little more about how the funding allocation. All right, so on to the topics that we have for you. We wanted to give you an update on the projects we've been working on, both with mineral sales tax, co-response, as well as for the phase 2 opiate projects. We've been doing a lot of work with the city, and there's been a lot of back and forth. I had hoped to push this a little bit quicker, but we work as fast as the slowest person. So in this case, we have needed to dot some I's and cross some T's on both sides of the river. The co-response to kind of align with what the city is doing will more than likely fall on the 12th before their board. So we were able to knock out last questions on the ILA between both the city and the county. The county was able to get certain protections in place as well as certain requirements. And then on the city side, they were able to get certain assurances as well, particularly with their unions for what those positions will look like. So once that got solidified, which was the longest part, we envision this will go before the board on the 13th of May, with the 12th going before the council. That's our current projection. The total amount, so next slide, will be capped at no higher than 650. I do believe that the actuals will come in much lower because we'll be able to negotiate certain costs, at least in that first year. Going into the second year, that's where we're going to see more of the ongoing cost actually be closer to the 600,000. So again, we'll see that in May, and then we'll have the opportunity to brief the board again annually thereafter on how the project is going. All data will be collected by our crisis provider for the response services. We'll be able to actually produce a report as well. Part of the requirement was for fire also to contribute, but we stopped short of actually requiring any of the fire department data being transmitted. There's some issues about how that gets fed over. So it's going to be put into our system. So we'll get what we can. We still need to work out those nuts and bolts. Any questions on the co-response program?
Madam Chair, I was just going to mention, we'll be back in front of the board to brief you on a release and just some media around this program according to Justin's timeline, so.
And then for phase 2 for open projects. So we'll give a quick update on that.
So on the phase 2 opioid projects, there's been a lot of discussion about expansion of services. So we thought it would be helpful just to kind of discuss what is already occurring with these 2 treatment providers and services that are funded for our ASL currently. So with SRHD, we already fund OTP services, MOUP treatment for individuals in the community, as well as individuals in the jail through our CJTA funding, as well as outreach education services to the community where they engage individuals in treatment services, talk to them about substance use and the possible consequences, provide education, connection to services and resources, as well as some cost sharing for private insurance individuals with private insurance as well to ensure that they're getting appropriate access to those treatment services. And those already exist and will continue to exist regardless of any potential expansion or ILA that's put into place. So important to recognize, and I think in the last 12 months, we had about 216 unique individuals receive those services through the ASO already. For STARS, our sobering triage and transition program, the STAT program, that is currently up and running. We're seeing about 80 individuals a month access services. We're about 400 since the program inception back in December 9th. And so that's been wildly successful. A lot of those individuals going on to continue treatment, about 80–85% of those just within STARS itself to their withdrawal management services, which we also contract through our ASO for those services. That's about a 3 to 7 day stay inpatient treatment, clinically subacute, which is non-medical treatment service for substance use. And we also contract with them for outpatient services co-occurring as well. So just kind of laying some groundwork of what services already are occurring and are available and will continue to occur. And our hope is to expand some of that access.
So it's important to note that because what we already do, so regardless of what we do with phase 2 to expand, services are being provided by Spokane County to the community. That's important to know. This is just enhancing and expanding it in partnership. So next slide. That leads into what have we been discussing about negotiations with the city to partner to achieve more services. And to start with the SRHD, that's a little bit more challenging because with the funding and the current staffing to expand out requires a little bit more planning. And then it does require the health board as well to discuss internally and vote on how they will utilize those. So we've taken a step back and split the ILAs for the STARS and SRHD to give more time for the health district board to be able to vote, discuss, and then to define a plan, and also to let us work with SRHD to define that plan so that when a decision is made by all parties, it's going to be agreed upon, we can address that. So want to note that we don't anticipate that the SRHD will fall in the same alignment as the STARS, allowing more time for the health district board to make a determination on how they would like to proceed. And I do think we still need to give a really defined plan to the board too. And that's still forthcoming from SRHD.
Yes, so we're going to separate those two because I think there's discussions of the health board as to timing and the fact that they're yes, they need to get staffed up currently, or they can staff up to go beyond those hours. So
Exactly. And funding is a huge part too. How can we incorporate that or use existing funding to support and enhance the work? Like I said, we're already doing the service. So allowing a little bit more time for us to plan that out is prudent. And we don't actually see any significant impact to the community than what is already there. Because we're already doing.
So do you know, there's a discussion with Mike Burgess that there's $4.6 million coming into Spokane region to a nonprofit for family treatment, drug treatment.
Yeah.
Do you know which nonprofit that is?
We have not confirmed yet on one of those. So we'll get back to you on that one.
But just Commissioner Kunis, but that's how it was written in the budget, like a Spokane nonprofit. Like it doesn't specify, which Mike seemed to indicate is normal, I guess. He didn't seem surprised by it, but I didn't know that's how they put it in an actual budget, but.
We've seen this done before. Usually they have someone in mind. We're still double checking to make sure that's correct. So we'll get back to you once we have some confirmation. Yeah. So yeah, we'll pause on that one. You will not see that come forward on the May 13th. It'll be still to be determined based on further discussions. For the STARS, we've been working with the city quite closely. We have an ILA that our legal team has been able to draft, and we've gone back and forth. And we got a lot of important protections, at least for the county side, as well as ensuring that there is a expectation of payment up front. So that part was great. We want to make sure that it's all paid so that we can allocate the dollars out. And then any non-utilized funds or funds that weren't encumbered in contract can be returned at the end. So they're protected for the city to get back money if we're not using it. However, the city did put a stipulation in the ILA for STARS to allow for 1 year with the option of another 2 years thereafter. That is challenging because it is hard to get a program up and going in 1 year to not have guarantee of funding there moving forward. Now, the way we designed the STARS stat and how we've currently funded does allow for us to do scalability where although the agency won't be impacted, meaning that we won't see a significant change in how the staffing is because the building would allow staff to move between their their inpatient general management, so they wouldn't have to lay off a bunch of people. It does scale something up and then we have to tell the community to scale back down. So we are working with the city to say we need some confirmation that year 2, like we planned, will be there. They're waiting to get back to us on that. We are set for at least that 1 year.
Just so the current status is the city approved the allocation of their opioid dollars to the partnership. Now we're just working on the interlocal agreement.
Yes. And the interlocal, based on the feedback we've gotten, there's just some last stipulating pieces that we sent back over to the city. Their plan is to have it on the 12th for their council and for us to vote on the 13th. Again, pending, there's no other issues there, but I just want to be clear on that. The year is only, the city is only confirming a year of funding with the anticipation that they'll do a second year, but it's not guaranteed. So I'm working on that piece. Get the reach for a year, let's, here we are, success. So you'll see that, I don't know, our legal had been working really hard. So really appreciate Nathan and all of his work on this. It's not been easy, especially when you've got 4 different ones dangling out there that have all different aspects. So thank you, Matt, to you and your team for all the help you've given us on that. I think that is it for us. Oh, the Valley, we have the interlocal with the Valley still out there. It's not as pressing because that gives the money over to the Crisis Relief Center. And as you know, we already have money going to that. So it's just about finalizing the pieces. Their ILA came back with a lot of stipulations. So we're going to meet and discuss what those stipulations are and how we're going to accept the money for the intended project and work out the nuts and bolts. So more to come on that, but not a pressing priority.
Which I think like
20,000 initially, and then 20,000 thereafter, I think.
Stipulations.
There were stipulations. So we have more discussions on that end. Like I said, not a pressing.
Yeah, Justin and I were very clear when the board agreed to accept some of these monies, that there is no stipulations, no strings attached. If you want to participate, you can provide the dollars over. If you want to add strings to it, then we don't need $40,000. So.
Yeah. However, in the spirit of a regional approach, Justin and Nathan will be working very closely with their legal to hammer out some kumbaya language so that we all can come together. That'll be acceptable for both parties.
Is that the technical term?
Yeah.
It's very obvious.
This morning, I am so excited. We
you
got,
do seem very optimistic.
yes,
today.
it's beautiful.
Glass half full on everything.
Well, if it isn't, I'm gonna make it that. So, any questions? All right, well, I'll see you all at 2.
Just a comment, I heard a lot of really great feedback on your presentation at the joint meeting with the city, so just thanks for that.
Yeah, I gave pre-warning about my tendencies, so we needed to worry. Everyone was warned. But yes, no, it was great to be able to see everyone come together and recognize our work towards achievable goals.
Thank you. Sorry, one last question. So are you, with SRHD, we're gonna take some time and really figure out what we can do to potentially expand hours and what that would take, and it's gonna take longer because there could be, staffing, and if you're gonna open up a new day, I mean, it takes a while to get that all set into motion. Are you looking for the city to contribute for 2 years to that project as well?
That was our goal.
Okay.
Especially with
I just think that's important. So, I mean, you know, we're gonna go off, if SRHD is going to hire more employees, open up more hours, I mean, we need, and I know they'll be able to bill for the services, you know, as they move forward. But having that startup funds and making sure it's sustainable, a 2-year timeline seems pretty reasonable.
Which is why I proposed that with a third year of titrating down. You know, I need 6 months of transition. That is why we brought that offline, is because after more consideration, we didn't feel sufficiently that the health board was informed. So we want to make sure that we provide a plan to the health board so they can also feel comfortable before we proceed. And then there was clear clear funding that we could identify to make it so that it be a viable program in the next years. Because I still don't believe we're all on the same page of that. So that'll be brought offline. I don't anticipate it'll occur before the July 1st. I'll be frank with you on that one. A lot of things to work out. Once we do, the contract still has to be negotiated. And so my plan for that is probably a July 1st implementation with May and June, working out things going before the board.
Before the SRHD, okay, so you'll work with the SRHD administration and the OTP program and really try and fine tune and then bring us a fairly
hashed out plan.
Hashed out, okay, I was
Yes.
looking for the right word, okay.
With clear funding identified.
Great.
That's
Because that's, I
great.
think that's still an outstanding question.
Because as we saw at the health board meeting, there was a difference between what we were being presented at the health board versus what was presented to council as for timing. So which I expressed that point yesterday in the mayor's meeting. So so that's why I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done at the health district.
Just more communication between all the parties that everybody's on the same page.
Well, I mean, thinking to make sure that we've got what the staffing is, which is why I asked the health board meeting about the pro forma, which is actually, we haven't seen yet, because if we're 5 people down at the health district already right now in staffing, and that's why we have those excess funds coming in, then how do we staff up to then have it be longer hours? If we can't staff what we currently have. So I think that's where the health district has to do a little bit more work and make sure they know and they need to be part of presentations to the city council and to the county commissioners. So that way we all know that everyone has agreed to those terms.
I think what they were gonna do too is tighten up how many patients per hour that are reasonably, that how many assessments can be done and really tightening up those numbers. So understanding how many, what their current census is and turnover and such, so.
Yeah, so that's why I don't think the health district's ready to really be out there yet. And I don't think we're gonna commit to funding until we have that information from the health district.
And nice, prudent to look at all of the options, yes. Again, the good news though is MAP treatment, same day appointments through STARS and our existing programs is already occurring. So we're not losing any accessibility, we're just wanting to expand that. County at least is ensuring that.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you too.
Okay. Next is George.
Yeah, speaking of interlocals,
Speaking of regional.
regional and collaboration and all that other good stuff. So I'm here today to talk about an interlocal agreement that we've been working on between the city of Spokane Valley and the county. Next slide, please. So this is really, there's an existing interlocal between the city of Spokane and Spokane County. This interlocal was passed back in 2012 and Commissioner French was the sole remaining commissioner from that time. And this was really an agreement between the city and the county to provide homeless management information system access and resources as it related to the Consolidated Homeless Grant, which at that time, that was a new grant that came out from the Washington State Department of Commerce. So wanted to lay that foundation so that is an existing agreement that has not been terminated. it's certainly past its prime and in need for updates. So next slide. What we're looking to do, or what we're proposing here, is a revised agreement. So this is a multi-jurisdictional agreement. It's taken us about 8 months to get to this point, going back and forth between friends at the city of Spokane and the city of Spokane Valley. Our legal team, Wes, within Matt's team, has been a huge help on this. And we've been going back and forth using really this existing interlocal agreement as the foundation for what's being presented to you all today. The focus here is really a coordinated effort to achieve the objectives outlined in the 5-year plan to end homelessness. This is a plan that the Continuum of Care Board leadership came to you all last month and gave a presentation on. It's voted on, approved by the Regional Continuum of Care, and a particular focus on data, coordination between how we go about our request for proposals, and then avoiding the duplication of efforts. One thing I want to know, it sounded like, as Justin was talking about his, there were some financial connections with their interlocal. This interlocal really spells out that we will coordinate, collaborate, and work well together. Whether I'm in the seat in 3 years from now, or if my counterparts at the city or the valley are there. So next slide goes on to kind of highlight this. So the Regional Homeless Collaborative, when they met back in August of last year, representatives, myself, Dawn Kinder and Gloria Mans from their respective jurisdictions stood in front of the room to talk about our collaborative efforts, the work that we've done to kind of carry on to the best of our abilities, the work that was done previously around creating a regional homeless collaborative. One of the things that we heard from the group, particularly Councilmember Bingle, was, that's great that you all work well together, but what happens when one of you leaves? And so that kind of led us down the path of, well, we should probably formalize something. And there was some consideration about a memorandum of understanding between the jurisdictions, and we felt that it needed to be more robust than just a memorandum of understanding. So that led to taking a look at the existing interlocal agreement, and then just trying to one, include the city of Spokane Valley into that agreement, and then get it more up to date with where we're at as a region. Next slide. So in small print here, abbreviated, within the interlocal agreement that you all have in your packet today, under joint responsibilities, I believe it's section 4, there are all these bullet points that spell out the work that we're doing. You will see language that says coordinate, collaborate, consult. Really, at the end of the day, you all, as the Board of County Commissioners, will set the priorities for the funds that come through Spokane County. You will award those funds. You will allow us to enter into contract as we go through our formal request for proposal processes. But this is saying that we, as 3 jurisdictions, will work together to try and collaborate to the best of our abilities to make it easier and reduce the duplication of services for those folks that are providing the services.
So what happens in this interlocal agreement? Because I see some of the resolution is like required and shall and those kinds of things when we have different policies. And I look at this specifically the inclement weather. Our policy versus what the city's policies are very different.
Yep.
And so, how are you guys looking at those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think a good example of that is back in, I think it was September, we put out a joint request for proposals with the city of Spokane around inclement weather. It wasn't that we were going to see what we got back and then determine if it was appropriate to fund or not. But it was more of a regional coordinated approach to identify where those needs were. What we saw in the responses to that request for proposal process was that we didn't really have a very strong network outside of the city of Spokane for warming centers in particular at that time. So it's more, what are you all doing? What are we doing? And how can we find ways to fill in gaps if they exist?
Because I just don't want to get into the fact when we say required to coordinate that we're. I mean, again, if their policy is very different than ours, so I don't want to be forced into contributing to longer days and longer hours when we're not the ones doing the RFPs for them, you know, because they're making decisions differently than we are.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and each jurisdiction maintains the ability to set our own priorities and parameters. You all are the legislative body for determining how we allocate those resources and how we set those priorities. We'll bring community feedback to you all based on what we're hearing, but you all will establish how we prioritize the allocation of those resources.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but why is the L red?
Yeah, thank you for
That's what
that.
you were getting to.
Getting to it, yeah.
All right. Oh, wait.
I think,
Not Blackie.
Yes.
so I think so it says we shall coordinate, but it doesn't, I think later in the document, it adds again that every jurisdiction is, you know, separately making policies, procedures, decisions. So I don't know if that's somewhere else in the document, but
It is, I'm looking for it. I'm trying to find it.
remember so I mean, the idea is we're coordinating, but it doesn't mean we're providing the same level of service at the same locations or anything like that. But the idea is that we're coordinating so that hopefully throughout the county, if people during a heat event need access to cooling centers, we're talking to each other about where those are and communicating out to the public so that they can access those. But some of them, I mean, the majority might be in the urban city centers, but we can at least communicate about where those are.
Yeah, I think you all have heard me say this before. Really our focus within the housing and community development team is going to be more on the rural and suburban response. When we start talking about inclement weather, the city of Spokane will own that more urban response.
I'm just looking at the third whereas, where it's at the very front start. It's whereas all parties are required to integrate and coordinate the respective homeless plans, strategies, actions. I just think when we start to say required, then I worry that could be taken in different ways. So, and since that's in the overall arching part, I'm concerned that then feeds into the rest of it. Could be interpreted, I don't know.
That's not new
That's what
language,
my
right? It was
legal
the
counsel
previous.
need to help.
Yeah, I mean, everything through the whereas is the exact same. The update of the 25. So, but we can absolutely, I can chat with our counterparts on that, see if there's an appetite for taking a look at that.
I just think when we say, I mean, I don't think we can require us all to be, we would like us all to be getting together and coordinating, but I don't know.
Just a clarification, is that language currently in the existing ILA?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's an outdated ILA, so it's not currently.
Well, it's not being followed, but it is in.
Right, so which is why I'd rather, make sure we really take a look at some of those words that are those absolutes. Than versus,
But if you read
There-
the whole
there
whereas, it's within their jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So it's saying that each party, each entity is coordinating their respective housing plans, actions within their respective jurisdictions. So I think it's speaking to each of us as individual parties, but not actually.
That's how I read it, but I mean, if you think we need to clean up the language a little bit to make that more clear, I mean, I'm comfortable with George reaching back out to the other jurisdictions to clean that up. But I was reading it kind of the same way Commissioner Walcott was. But number 6 down is the right to contract independently. It says any party reserves the right to contract independently for the acquisition of goods or services or disposal of any property without notice to the other parties and shall not bind or otherwise obligate the other parties to participate in the activity. So I mean, I think that kind of gives a lot of flexibility to either or to any of the 3 parties to kind of about things the way they feel is in the best interest of their jurisdiction.
I think number 2 also would further strengthen that. Second sentence says the parties shall administer their various program grants separately. In accordance with federal state, so.
That's right.
I did want to address the red writing there. So that is not in the list of joint responsibilities that you all have in front of you under item 4. So that is a proposal that came to us when we met on Friday of this last week. Commissioner Waldrop and Mayor Haley were asking for something to reflect data coordination. And so we put that in there for considerations as well.
Would we want to actually state, because it all feeds into the
HMIS.
I mean, do we actually state that system?
We actually do. So I think next slide, Sharissa, references. So we have this interlocal agreement, but it's also tethered to these 3 other documents. One is the 5-year plan for the COC, continuum of care. The other one is an additional companion to the 5-year plan, which is a performance management plan. So effectively setting some minimum thresholds for performance, we can absolutely rise above those and identify additional performance measures. But it's just kind of a baseline so that everyone's playing by the same goals. And then the third bullet point there is a data sharing agreement between the city of Spokane and Spokane County for the homeless management information system. So that allows us to access the data that we're contracting with, ensure that we've got good quality data in the system. And then that also feeds into a few weeks, or maybe it was even last week when the city was here talking about their longitudinal data analysis. So coupling that all together, the city of Spokane Valley is also entering information to the homeless management information system. So just gives us a more comprehensive, broad picture of exactly how we're doing throughout the region.
And so is the City of the Valley part of that data sharing?
Say that.
Is the City of the Valley part of the data sharing? Because it just says City of Spokane and Spokane County.
Yeah, so the data sharing agreements are unique to the jurisdictions themselves. So the city of Spokane has a data sharing agreement with the health district. That's how they're able to do the dashboard for us. And then with us, and then I'm not exactly sure what the status is of the data sharing agreement between the city and the City of the Valley. I know that they've been going back and forth on a few things, but it's very, very close, if not already in place.
Okay, because we don't have their data input into the system, it's not going to be complete data.
Yeah, so their data is going into the system through their contract with Frontier Behavioral Health. So they're entering the data. It's just the Valley staff being able to manage and access and work with that data. Next slide. So the 5-year plan, the objectives that are outlined in that are listed in front of you here. One thing to note is this is really a mirror of what the state of Washington Department of Commerce has put into their plan. And per the RCW, we are required to mirror those objectives. Effectively, the state's trying to say everyone within the state that's receiving state funds, let's all work together to achieve these 5 objectives. So those are somewhat non-negotiable, but we have the ability. I think the good thing is that they're broad enough that we can still drill down and say specifically what, say for example, number 3, prevent episodes of homelessness wherever possible. We you all as county commissioners can help direct this department on exactly what that means when we put out our request for proposal. I think that's it.
Just going back to the red ink issue, I just think the data sharing piece is really necessary. I thought the presentation we had from the city folks was showed that data in a digestible way. You could really dive into that. So thanks to Commissioner Waldrop and Commissioner Kearns for your work on this. I think it's a good step, and especially that piece.
On Friday, we had, let's see, city council members, Bingle and Zapone, and then Mayor Haley. So everyone was kind of looking at it, giving feedback. And so I just appreciated all the work that everyone's put into it. So thank you, George. Yeah. It's been a lot of work, and for not that long of an agreement, but.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's difficult to understand how much can go into a pretty simple cooperative agreement. But I'm grateful for everyone that helped out along the way with getting us to where we're at. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
City.
Who takes us to Commissioner Jordan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to put the item back on the agenda for consideration of forming the PFAS task force after it came up in our discussion last week when we were talking about the aquifer protection area on Tuesday. So I just wanted to follow up with the board, share a few of my thoughts as by way of update, and hopefully seek some clarity as to kind of the direction that the board wants to pursue and any next steps. So first of all, I think one of the reasons that it's particularly timely for us to convene this conversation is the idea of a West Plains-based APA being talked about as we approach potential decisions on that. I think a task force could be a good vehicle to get some feedback and ideas from jurisdictional partners, citizens, and any experts that are on that group in terms of what those dollars could be used for. Obviously, the county would be making final decisions on that, but it could be a good advisory function. So I just wanted to follow up, briefly speak to my thoughts on a few of the issues as it relates to getting the task force formed, and then if there's any comments. The first issue is really who to invite. And I think that the board has seen draft lists of participants. I think Commissioner French and I have largely been in agreement on the who on that list. And importantly to me, it included 4 impacted citizen members or liaisons to impacted citizens, which I appreciate. We also discussed some pieces around transparency measures for the task force, having the discussions be open to anyone to attend, potentially streaming on YouTube as well. So I think that's good and something that I think we're in agreement on. As to the idea of a co-chair or co-convener, I just wanted to thank Commissioner French for engaging Dr. Velasquez. I'm glad that the Health District has been brought into the conversation. Commissioner French and I last discussed this back in March. And as I mentioned last week, I had said that I thought a impacted citizen or someone like that with more expertise of the issue would be a good co-chair option. Although I remain very happy to be to participate, to lend support from my office to assist with the logistics of meetings. But I think that Dr. Velasquez is a really good option for that role. He's a doctor, he's respected, he's our county health officer. So I just wanted to say I hope we can move forward with engaging Dr. Velasquez. I know he's out of town, I believe, right now, so it might be good to have him back here. Regarding the scope of the conversation, I just want to reiterate my view that I believe the task force should focus first on the health impacts to residents as the most pressing need. However, I am not opposed to exploration of longer term solutions, which could include looking at ideas like new sources of water, expanding current sources that go out to the West Plains. So in my personal view, no solutions should be off the table as far as a task force is concerned. So I just wanted to state that it was not my understanding that efforts to set up the task force had ended, just that the conversation would continue. And so that's why I thought I would bring it back to the board for discussion, see if it's something that the board wants to convene or engage the health district about co-convening. And, you know, we all know we've had a lot of citizens testifying regularly about this issue, and I think we should get them some clarity as to the direction. And then I just want to also say, you know, I think it's really good work by the board to go to Olympia and advocate for the state funding that we have coming. So there's some good resources coming in to help correct toward folks who are impacted. And that's something we all worked hard on. So that's my view, but would just invite further comment if there is any.
French.
Let me share with you my perspective of how we got to where we're at. We engaged, I think, 2 times, maybe 3, and look for Matt to clarify, because I think he was at least one of them, maybe 2 of them, I don't know, doesn't matter. Anyway, we reached an impasse because as we were dealing with the scope, I wanted to, and I was very emphatic about this, wanted to include working toward a solution, which included, you know, bringing a new source of water to the West Plains. There is no other solution other than that available. There is no technology to clean PFAS out of an aquifer. And so unless you bring a new source of water, you're basically not providing any solution and stuff. So with that impasse and with Mr. Jordan's rejection of the idea of co-chairing, as far as I was concerned, the issue is dead. And then, you know, followed up by, you know, being told that there would not be sanctioned by the board. I said, okay, fine, I will do it on my own. So I did reach out to Dr. Velasquez, and he and I met on Friday before he left town, and we had a very, very good conversation about scope and how to put it together and stuff. He is out of town for 2 weeks. When he returns, we'll finalize it and get underway with doing the outreach and you know, engaging in the meetings to work on the task force and stuff. So that I'm well down the road. I'm moving forward. If the board wants to do something different, fine, God bless you. But I'm done doing the dance. And I've got a new partner now. We got a different song, and I'm moving forward. And so that's where I'm at with regard to the task force. I did have a conversation yesterday with Ecology after we found out that we were going to be the recipients of the grant money, and started the effort to coordinate with Ecology on how to administer the grant money. Also had that conversation with Dr. Velasquez in anticipation that we were going to get some funding from the legislature. I'd gotten calls from different representatives indicating that there would be something coming, did not know how much. Very grateful to the legislature for providing what they have. But, you know, the question, and we did have a meeting yesterday with Jeff McMorris and Heather Arnold about, you know, process to move forward. How are we going to, you know, identify who's going to actually install these things, how we're going to administer it, and how we're going to coordinate with the other agencies, including Department of Ecology. So that is moving down the road. And there is other information that's positive for the county that I would like to share as a result of my conversation with the college yesterday, but I cannot do it in open session. And so if you want to move into executive session now, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, we'll try and share it some other way. But, there's some good news coming as a result of what the legislature did that will have a positive impact on the county. But again, they can't do that in open session.
Which is fine to go to the executive session, but I think before we do, I mean, I guess my comment would be, I didn't think the task force was dead. I thought we were just waiting on the scope to come back to the board. And then the other thing I would say is that if you're directing staff, one commissioner can't direct staff to basically do a whole department. And so we don't have any idea what that means as with this $7 million coming in and what should be. And I think that's a commission decision to identify what that's going to look like and how our staff is going to be impacted.
So Madam Chair, you told me specifically on the DS 3 weeks ago that there would be no task force sanctioned by this board. You said that. Commissioner Kearns, did you hear that?
I think what it was this wouldn't be an official county
task force.
That's
right. Which means that I'm on my own. I'm on my own. If the board is not going to sanction it and create it and be part of it, then I'm on my own.
Well, that's why we weren't having 3 commissioners on it. So so we were having 2 commissioners. So that way the recommendations could come back to the board. So that was what I meant by that.
Yeah, I think if I recall, I think the concern was, yes, if there were 3 commissioners, then there were quorum issues, OPMA requirements.
You're making decisions outside of commission.
And I think that had that happen, then what records have to be retained, which you'd have access to the county attorneys, if it were an actual county task force or subcommittee or whatever terminology you want to use. Yeah. So.
I just think that in my opinion, the best next step would be to invite Dr. Velasquez to come talk with us all and for the scope just to come back and be discussed. That would be my suggestion.
And I think that's how I remember it, is we were still discussing the formality of establishing or putting together a roundtable or a forum or a task force. I don't know what word you want to use, but some sort of efforts to coordinate, right, between all of our different partners. I think the health district is a great partner to have at the table. So I'm fully supportive of having Dr. V come back and we can discuss with what his ideas are as well. I guess where we left it in my mind was trying to figure out, again, what is the scope of the task force, and is it kind of a unofficial group that is meeting for a certain amount of time to bring back recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. So whether it's, I don't know what the difference would be, and legal can help us, but whether something's official or not, but I think it's important that we move forward to say we care about this issue. We want to bring folks together to identify ways to, which is wonderful that we have funding from the state, ways that we can best use the funding. What are other ways to address the issues, such as an APA or other strategies? All those conversations, having those in some sort of roundtable format with regulators and health district and citizens would be really helpful, I think, to move things forward. So I don't know what kind of official body we need to form, but I think it's important that we form the task force as some sort of board action, and then allow that group to make recommendations in an advisory role, back to us, so we can figure out the best strategies to support health of folks on the West Plains.
Can I ask a quick, so the $7.5 million from the state, who is that allocated to?
Spokane County.
It did come to the county.
It's-
It will be the county's responsibility on how those dollars are spent.
Yes.
Okay.
And stuff. And so I'll just comment, you know, I've sat on the dais now for months and got beat up by people in the audience, and none of you had said a word about that, about the task force or anything else. Not one of you. And so I'm tired of getting beat up over inaction from this board. If you want to form a board task force, great, let's do it. I've already got the ball rolling. But I'm not going to sit on the dais while you guys hem and haw about what you want to do and get beat up. I'm not going to do it anymore. And what I did last week is just the beginning, because every inaction you take, everything that you do to stand in the way, I'm going to go public. Because the public deserves to know who's standing in the way of getting clean water.
Sounds like we have an executive session on this. Are there any other miscellaneous matters?
Or 12.
Pat has one.
So we'll have a press release draft on the APA prepared. I have one prepared. It's gone through a few different layers of review, but based on last week's action and the prosecutor sending information to the auditor in early May, we will have that ready. We also will have, I can be prepared today to give you an outline, but I've worked with Ben Bradabo and his team and Kyle, Scott and others at staff level to prepare a communications plan for going to the ballot with the measure. It'll look very similar to plans that we've discussed in the past. Most recently, the juvenile measure takes a lot of the same tacks, but it will contemplate messages that we want to convey to the public. It will contemplate a timeline for various communications tactics and channels, things like a website, things like a video, things like this press release, et cetera, things like a fact sheet. So we can start getting the word out to the public and doing a public education campaign. I'm willing to table that and bring that back in mid-May. The press release, the body of it is going to have all of those key messages from the communications plan. So I will get that to inboxes if I have your approval.
That sounds great. I just was wondering, I didn't see any news on whether the city of the Valley chose to join the APA. Okay, sorry. I did not-
Last Tuesday meeting.
Okay.
So I think all the
Obviously, you'll be
jurisdictions,
coordinating with the public information folks from the both other cities, all the different cities that have signed on.
and I think that's one key discussion point for when we get to the communications plan is what level of effort do we want to assume or to try and request from the other jurisdictions, because that will impact cost of things like mailers or utility inserts. If they have customers, we assume that they're going to do their communications based on the messaging we agree to. But it does contemplate coordination, yes, at the staff level, but also at the elected official level with your counterparts on councils or mayors, as it may be, to get some of that agreement. I will just offer up, as we all know, because we've discussed before, the other jurisdictions also have ballot measures in similar timing, either in November or in August. Several of them do. So I think we need to test some of those assumptions, and then we, at the elected level, should be maybe doing some outreach. I would recommend to convey our desire that there is coordination and that somebody's reaching back to us. But I do think we will need to carry not just the unincorporated area message for the APA, but also be kind of the prime mover in preparing these documents, since we have a lot of the knowledge around the APA and what the fees can be used for. So I'll bring that back to you. But the press release, it sounds like we'll get that in the inboxes to send us ready, as soon as everyone's reviewed it. It's good. It does have a quote from the chair and I think maybe a department level quote in it. But just expresses the need for safe and clean drinking water through the APA renewal and expansion, which is what the ballot title will say.
Kyle.
Sure, I just wanted to provide an update. Staff did a little bit of looking into the list from Mike Burgess. It does appear that one of the two Argonne items in there is ours. That's the reconstruction of Argonne from the bridge up to Bigelow Gulch, the 3.96 million.
And everyone's favorite topic on proclamations. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh. Madam Chair. On proclamations, you've all signed or will sign 4 for today, so it'll be a full schedule. One of the district court judges had requested to, he's going to recess his court to come over for it. And so the request is, I think it requires a motion under Robert's Rules of Order to change your agenda to take proclamations first before open public forum, and then to prioritize the therapeutic courts one first. So I just put that out there. I think that's what we heard back, is it will require a motion at the beginning of the meeting if you wanted to pursue that.
I think our local rules are silent on that.
So do we need a motion?
Just by consent.
I think by consent is fine.
Maybe I think it's our district court judge is trying to ready to be there.
What time is he
Recessing.
recessing?
2
his
o'clock.
court?
He's going to try to be there at the top of the meeting.
Okay, I was just gonna say have him recess it at 2:15 and we'll be right on time. It's like-
Just not knowing how public comment long could go.
So, and I didn't know the order on the agenda of the proclamations when this came to me yesterday, so I asked Pat to check with Rico.
Moving item D under proclamations, right after the pledge. That we hear.
Yes. And then we do the open public forum and then continue the question. So we wouldn't do all 4 of them, just that one.
The last item I'd bring to your attention, we have 4 upcoming events. So we'll have a very busy May. We have Bear Lake, Liberty Lake, Newman Lake, and then the Sheriff's Helicopter in early June. And we've been working with Gina and Shelley to get those on your calendar. We did work with your staff to confirm availability. I think we're starting to get RSVPs back from commissioners, but as we start putting programs together for each of those events, if you could kindly accept or decline your attendance at those events. We'll make sure that you're included or not included based on your attendance.
Kind of circling back on proclamations, since the board is not meeting the first week of May, you have National Public Works Week coming up. If the proclamation would be,
It's already been approved.
it's already been approved. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I brought it up when Kyle was speaking earlier.
Lovely, thank you.
Any other miscellaneous items before we go into executive session? I believe we have Commissioner French's executive session, which Helen, who would you like in attendance?
15 minutes. And your potential litigation.
Would you like in
Oh,
attendance?
Commissioners, Mr. Olson, Mr. Simmons, pardon? Rick Morris is here.
What?
Yeah.
We may wait, is,
We have a pending potential litigation as well.
so we may do yours, because you have more people that are here.
We can do mine this afternoon if you want.
Then we could do this one first, and then we have to do the closed session this afternoon. Since we're ready
I think ours will be 20 minutes. We'll have risk management, that Curda, Scott Simmons for.
very
Yeah.
queued up. Okay, so we're gonna go into and no.
No action.
No action.
Is that what- Okay. Okay, so how do we want to do that? If we've got a 15-minute, 20-minute with a closed session? It's more part of yours taken care of now. And I'd like to get the other one, executive session, then do the closed session after the 2 o'clock. More proclamations are pretty much gonna go. Yeah. Yes, we'll figure out. Okay. I guess, have you already stopped the recording?
I believe so.